Yeah, guys, I'm bullish on the Patriots. I think the Patriots are going to vie for the playoffs this year.
I don't mean to go all Jim Mora on you, but playoffs?
I think this is a great situation for Drake May, their young quarterback.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the New England Patriots in tonight's video. I really like Drake May. I was just watching some games from last season, and I really loved that. Honestly, the whole last drive against the Tennessee Titans, it was pretty crazy, but it's neither here nor there. We're doing like over-under predictions based on other people's predictions, and the New England Patriots are more commonly set at 8.5 wins, and majority of people, almost everybody, is picking the under at 8.5. But it's usually not related to the New England Patriots roster or Mike Vrabel or Drake May or anything. They're just saying it's hard to double your win total because Patriots won 4 last season, and it's hard to be an above 500 team. And I always find it interesting because people, in regards to Drake May and the Patriots team, is like, well, sophomore slumps exist, right? They're very common, right? I think the roster around Drake May right now is, obviously not even close to what they had dealt with last season, but I think teams have more tape on him, blah, blah, blah. I think it's pretty crazy because when you go back and you watch the New England Patriots of last season, it's like, all right, well, should Gerard Mayo maybe have been the coach? Probably not. Should Alex Van Pelt have been the offensive coordinator for Drake May? The answer is probably just actually a no. Well, Drake May ranked 33rd and throws 20-plus yards down the field. And it's like, all right, well, his offensive line had a 48.5 PFF grade, which is like not even close to the second worst team in the NFL, and their team's 66 PFF receiving grade is the third worst in the league. And so, we look at some of these moves like Stephon Diggs, Will Campbell, Morgan Moses, Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, and it's like gonna be clearly a much better brand of football for this Patriots team. So I just kind of wanted to riff a little bit about it, mainly about this offense, because the defense to me, Mike Vrabel, even with last year's roster, it would have been a better defense in my opinion. But Milton Williams, Harold Landry, Robert Spillane, Carlton Davis, they were already a good coverage team. I think the defense is actually going to be good. So if you guys want a defensive video, let me know down below. But without further ado, hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. We talk Patriots as much as we possibly can. The coaching staff, it's been talked about ever since Mike Vrabel got officially hired as the head coach, but it really is the biggest acquisition of the offseason in my opinion. He brings a very good track record. The Tennessee Titans, the team he most recently coached with Ryan Tannehill as their starting quarterback, very good situationally. They were very prepared, and you knew that playing the Tennessee Titans was not going to be an easy victory. And they were a very good football team for a very long time, and maybe they just lacked the playoff success, but I think Drake May's career is probably going to be a little bit better, hopefully, than Ryan Tannehill, but no disrespect, obviously, to Tannehill's way. When we look at the offense, I've kind of already briefly touched on this. Alex Van Pelt comes on in as the offensive coordinator, and I get it. He's got a pretty solid track record, former NFL quarterback as well, whatever. It just wasn't the fit, and it kind of almost reminds me a little bit of the Chicago Bears, where it's like, all right, Gerard Mayo, all right, okay. The offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, all right, I guess. Doesn't really make much sense, but okay. Let's get excited for it because you're the fan of the team, so let's make it make sense in our head. Well, now let's say Josh McDaniels. I've covered the Raiders for a few seasons now. There are people who are just better set to be a coordinator than they are to be a head coach. Like, Vic Fangio comes to mind. The dude is an absolute mastermind on the defensive side of the football, but as far as a head coach goes, probably not. And Josh McDaniels is the same thing, because every Raiders fan on planet Earth hates Josh McDaniels, and when you look at it offensively, he's a very good, clearly, offensive coordinator. So we look at some of these new additions: Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, their entire draft, their entire free agency, honestly, and it gets me excited. And you're not going to win football games with a bad offensive line, and we'll talk about that in a second, but Will Campbell at left tackle, I'm very excited about. Morgan Moses at right tackle, I'm very excited about. And I get it, maybe the center position's a little bit up in the air because Garrett Bradbury has historically never been a great pass protector. He is very good in run blocking, but he's not the best pass pro guy. But Jared Wilson, the rookie out of Georgia, he intrigues me a lot as well. I think he's going to fit perfectly in the National Football League, especially with Mike Vrabel and this New England Patriots team. But real quick, let's talk about Stephon Diggs. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of the fun stuff from training camp for the New England Patriots, and I'm loving what I'm hearing, especially the rookies. But there have been a couple of guys, like Stephon Diggs, I guess apparently is clearly wide receiver number one. And I know he's coming off a torn ACL, but as far as like camp hype goes, Demario Douglas, I have seen for honestly the entire summer, but especially I think you guys are like 4 training camp practices in by the time we're making this video. That's one of those guys where I think Demario Douglas is a stud. Like, I think he's an actual stud. Kendrick Bourne and Kayshon Boutte, these guys are good. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, they're 2 rookies from last year. I get it. They didn't pan out in their rookie season. I get it. Stephon Diggs is 31. He's recovering from a torn ACL, but statistics would show he's a top 10 wide receiver as far as wins above replacement goes. So you don't need Stephon Diggs at 25 years old. You need a Stephon Diggs that's obviously going to stay healthy, but be a consistent, reliable number 1 wide receiver for Drake May. Now, if he doesn't recover and doesn't return from form, we'll talk about that. But for the most part, I have a hard time believing Stephon Diggs, even off a torn ACL, is going to be a negative player for this Patriots team next season. I was reading an offensive line article, and they had you guys ranked at 29th. I don't know. I don't really like rankings to begin with, but obviously they're making moves to not be the 29th ranked paper offensive line in the National Football League. I really liked Morgan Moses on the right side. He signed him to a 3-year contract. On paper, he's 34 years old, and he's coming off an injury-shorted season. He was like 52nd amongst all tackles in PFF overall grading last year, but I want veterans on this offensive line. I think he's going to help out Will Campbell and the entire O-line in general. And, even real quick, with Jared Wilson and Garrett Bradbury, I get it. Like, Garrett last season for Minnesota was the 35th ranked center as far as pass blocking goes. Well, he's never been the best pass pro guy. So when I look at a guy like Jared Wilson, maybe the offensive line isn't perfect. It's not going to be a 1-year type of fix. 6'3", 310 pounds. He was only a 1-year starter at center over at Georgia, but he's very athletic, and it gets me excited for the future, whether it's Garrett Bradbury the entire year, whether Jared Wilson beats him out in training camp, whatever the situation is. Like, if Wilson ran a 4.84 40-yard dash at the combine. That was the fastest by any center, so I'm excited about that. Will Campbell was an absolute dog at left tackle for LSU, an SEC football team last season. Kyle Williams averaged 17.1 yards per reception last season. Travion Henderson, we haven't heard a single bad thing about him and Kyle Williams, to be quite honest with you. So I'm not really concerned with the win-loss record. I'm a little bit more optimistic. I don't like speaking ill of NFL teams or especially NFL players. So if I had to make a prediction, I would say the New England Patriots win 9 games next season. But honestly, anywhere around 500 is going to do the trick as far as, because Drake May would be clearly the franchise quarterback. So record I'm not too concerned about. I do think it will be better than people think. All I care about is Drake May, and everything I've seen from him does have me very excited, especially with these acquisitions they've done. So, folks, that's it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. Give me a loose win-loss prediction down below, and we'll see you soon. Peace.